Hello and welcome to Resiliency the Podcast, the place to find stories, strategies, and inspiration on how to embrace change, overcome challenges, and redefine resilience in today's ever-evolving world. I'm Asef Quader, the executive producer and co-creator of Resiliency the Podcast, and today's guest host. Today we have something a little bit different. We're going to be doing a little Q&A with our two hosts. We're going to give you a little background information. We're going to do some behind-the-scenes stuff. We're going to talk to our hosts about why they are the perfect people to teach you about resiliency. First, we have Dr. Kelly Culver, who is my favorite Canadian, all due respect to Ryan Reynolds. She is the world's first doctor of resiliency. She also runs an international consulting business, traveling all around the world, helping businesses and countries and people become more resilient. Dr. Culver's co-host is Jenn Quader. She's a global communications expert and CEO of the PR firm, The Smart Agency. Now, I'm sure you guys have kind of realized that Jenn and I share a same last name. And no, that's not how she got the gig here. If anything, it's how I got the gig myself. Guys, thank you for being here, even though you're paid to be here.
Who's getting paid? Wait a minute.
I missed that memo. You're
Hold
the
on.
executive producer. You failed to hit send on that email.
My payroll is late, folks.
When I said this is a behind-the-scenes episode, this is what happens behind the scenes. They berate me constantly. I am learning resiliency through fire. It is a great time for your old co-creator, Asef Quader. Guys, how are you today?
I'm feeling good, ready to roll.
That's great. Okay, so let's jump into it. How did the podcast come to be? We all met in Paris at the TED Talk back in March of 2024. And I like to think we all hit it off pretty well. And we had brilliant talked to so many smart people. Let's talk about it. Dr. Kelly, let me start you off. What did you think of Jenn when you first met her?
Oh, she was a lot of fun. We were sitting in the back, kind of talking to each other, and we were the only two, and you, who actually stayed the whole day to listen to all of the TED Talks that were given at the practice run so that we could situate ourselves in the bigger picture. And I think that alone started to form the bond that, that we now have together. And we realized that we have similar senses of humor and different styles, but it just kind of worked. That's my experience. Anyways, how about you, Jenn? What do you think?
Well, when I first met you, Kelly, I met you there was a little reception actually when we very first arrived. And I had read through all the names and I had seen that Dr. Kelly Culver was a doctor of resilience and she was invited as the keynote speaker of the event. And so Jenn didn't play. She beelined straight to that keynote speaker because I was like, I'm going to learn everything I can from her. And what I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, is she's never disappointed. So I immediately felt struck by that Canadian warmth and sweetness. But more than that, found that as we sat together, as we met at that, and then sat together at that rehearsal, there was a lot of like-mindedness in seeing resilience as a larger strategy for business and for life. So it was kind of beyond the TED Talk. And I think that's where some of that connection really started.
And I can tell you, when I first met Kelly, she first walked in and she was wearing her now iconic red jacket. She walked in and of course, I think Kelly stands all of 5'0". She walked in. She's tiny, small in height, not in stature. And she walks up and I say hello to her and she gives me a nice hello. And that was it. And that was kind of like my first meeting of her. But what made me fall in love with Kelly was after, Jenn, you gave your talk and Kelly came up to me and gave me a big hug and a kiss on the cheek. And I won't talk about what happens in your talk because we're going to talk about that in future episodes. But I thought it was really sweet. And then after that, we formed a great bond. And I think we all fell in love with each other. And we are great collaborators. And I love working with Kelly. And Jenn's there too. She's Always here.
Well, I'd like to speak to the fact that one of the things we talk about as far as resilience is there's the focus on it, and then there's the acting, the doing, the driving it forward. And I think, Asef, that really lies with you, because when we talked about doing this podcast, but when we came home, you sat down and wrote up a concept. And I think that to me was the most pivotal moment of what brought us here and why we are doing this, is that you put pen to paper and you made the idea come to life. So you got the gig as guest host. Congrats.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Yay.
Because you you saw the magic that was happening in the room in Paris on the cocktail party night, the dry run, and then the actual day itself.
I think that's correct. I thought
you ran with it.
I really felt everyone at the TED Talk formed a really close bond. And for people who are going to listen to future episodes, this is our second episode. All the episodes in our first run here are based on the TED Talks that happened in Paris. The TED Talks are called, give me it again, it's
Resilience Redefined.
Resilience Redefined. And it was really impactful to me. And I thought it's really important that we do this. You guys heard our first episode, Daniela, talk about how she was the one who put it in our heads that we should do a podcast. We should get together and do this. And I ran with it because I thought it was too important not to. And I'm happy I did it. We're here. We are going strong, guys. We're going to have at least 10 episodes right off the bat here for you. And we're going to move into some really interesting things. We have a lot of guests lined up that are just fantastic speakers who talk about so many interesting things, so many important things, very powerful talks coming up. Let's move on. What was your favorite moment from that TEDx event, Kelly?
My favorite moment, I think, was the dress rehearsal. And the reason it was a dress rehearsal as opposed to the real thing is that it was an adventure, and there was a lot of exploration by each one of the speakers, but also by the American University of Paris itself. They had been doing TED Talks in the past. COVID had put that on hold. So they were bringing it back into the forefront, and they had some technical challenges, some recording challenges. We were all trying. We were all in that 15. Yeah, I know, all the time. We had that 15-minute window that you have to finish your TED Talk, basically within 15, 18 minutes max, or else TED kicks you out. It was a journey where we didn't know what the end was going to look like. I really enjoyed that whole day, as opposed to, yes, I gave a great TED Talk on the day I was supposed to. And yes, I anchored the event, I closed it. And the only reason I did that, Jenn, I was the only non-American university person. I was the extraterrestrial in the room. So they put me at the end. That's the only reason.
Well, that and you hold the PhD, my dear. That's a
minor detail.
Kind of
We're pretending a little bit. Oh, man.
Jenn, how about you? What was your favorite moment?
That's a tough question, because I don't see it as one. I really think that is what resilience is it's building momentum. Momentum is a series of moments, almost like music, like a series of notes. And I think that there were these different, using that music analogy, these chords that were struck. And I think this event actually changed my thoughts on resilience. And that doesn't happen all the time. You don't go somewhere and always change the way you think. But I really thought resilience just meant being strong and trying hard and get up if you fall off the horse. And I found out that resilience means community. It means engagement with others. And so to me, that's my favorite part, is that I learned something really magical. So I'm excited to be in this resiliency community now.
And isn't that cool? Because that's the one thing, guys, a little behind the scene note here. Once again, we have recorded right now 7-8 episodes already. And the one note that keeps coming up is community, how important community is to resiliency. And that's what we want to be. We want to form a community with everybody here. Everyone who's listening, we want to build a community. We're coming up with a resiliency kit that we're all putting together, led by our fabulous doctor, of resiliency. Can you talk a little bit about that, Kelly?
The toolkit, the resilience toolkit?
The resiliency toolkit, yes.
Sure. Well, we're looking at putting together a resilience toolkit that people can use, whether it's an individual, a company, or a country, on best practices around the world in resilience, and also a lot of the key learnings that we have taken from the different speakers that we've had on so far. So any magical moment or key learning or observation or insight that we've had from any one of our TED Talks is going to be part of our toolkit. We're asking our guests who bring their experience in resilience to give us key readings, things that help them along, different insights, and also building things like resilience models that you can take as an individual, with your family, with your kids, or in your company.
Mm-hmm. And it's going to be filled with a lot of useful things. We are really excited about this. Once again, we're trying to build a community to help everyone become more resilient. Jenn, let's talk about, what do you want people to learn from our podcast?
Okay, that's such an interesting thing. There's a friend of mine who I was chatting with her, and I was talking about the feeling I have when I want to share something, like, why am I sitting on this podcast, me and Dr. Culver and you, like, what is that feeling? And I said, I really want to teach something. And she put her finger up in my face and she said, don't teach, just shine. Just showcase, just highlight. And so I want to say, I don't want to dictate what any listeners will learn. I want to just shine a light. I want to, I think back to when I used to be a little performer and I worked on cruise ships, and they had the little lights and they had one little spotlight in the back that always someone from the kitchen would run. And so, and I think about that little spotlight, whoosh, and it would turn this way. And that's all I want to do. I want to take these stories and I want to put a spotlight on them. And then as we move past TEDx, I want to put a spotlight on business people who are reinventing their businesses. I want to put a spotlight on mamas who have reinvented themselves. Like, whoever it is, I want to spotlight them. And then I want our listeners to take from it whatever they need.
And I think that's an important point. A lot of people, when they hear the word resiliency, and I tend to use the word resilience, but a lot of people, when they hear the word resiliency, they're thinking of it from a personal point of view. And resilience spans all sectors, all industries. So it is the business leaders, it's entrepreneurs, it's venture capitalists, it's people in healthcare, people in education, it's people in communications. In your milieu, it's people in commercial real estate, it's moms. It isn't boxed in. And I guess that's one thing that I really learned about resilience is years and years and years ago, it was a word that was captured by engineering or by ecology. Full stop. And it has busted out of that, in the last 10 years, just completely busted out of that box of being fixed and measured, quantifiable. And now it's everywhere around us. And resilience fits the context in which you find yourself.
Can I dig into that for a minute? Because I see something really interesting in that, and help me understand, because I'm hoping I'm understanding the words appropriately. But so you said that resilience was locked into engineering and ecology. So engineering is what makes things work. And ecology, help me understand, is that like the natural earth? Help me, what is that? What is ecology?
Yeah, so the engineering piece around resilience for a long time, it's when you build an infrastructure, you build a bridge, you build a road, you engineer it to be resilient. So you stress test it. Mm-hmm. You want it to be stable. So resilience was about being stable, building back, bouncing back, recovering, being robust, those kinds of things. It didn't talk about being future-oriented or foresight or those kinds of things. The same with the ecology, with the environment. If we do something to the environment, how does it fix itself? How does it stop eroding? How do we, so environment or climate, if you will, or the Sustainable Development Goals in many ways came out of the idea of we have to fix Mother Earth. So we have to build it back to the way it was. Well, return to normal. What does that mean? When you have a crisis, it's never the same. It's a new normal. And that's the beauty of resilience. It's showing what a new normal can look like.
And I think that's a great thing to bring up because, we talk about how community is the backbone for resiliency, but a lot of that is the other thing that is involved in resiliency is the being adaptable to change that we are affected constantly by different things that happen in our lives. And the way to become resilient is to change. It's rolling with the punches, if you will, getting knocked down, getting back up, like Jenn had said earlier. It's all resilient. I look at resilient and resiliency as one is a noun and one is a verb, but it's all the same thing.
Well, there's no verb for resilience.
Interesting.
Resiliency is an adjective.
Okay, that's a good point. Yeah.
There is no verb for resilient.
You're right. You can't say I resilient this. There's no
Nope.
yeah.
It's I am.
Yeah, I am resilient.
Resilient.
I am is the, yeah. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. That's interesting.
Okay,
Thank God we have a doctor on here.
Thank God. Well, look, I love grammar, so I want to get in there. Kelly, what are some verbs that people could use if they want to achieve resiliency?
Well, you can look at things like build. Build is a really good word. You build something. So you build resilience. You look at resilience as a capacity. So it's a capability, it's a skill, it's an attribute. But I think if we're using words that are, everyday words that we use, not academic words. I might be a doctor, but I am by no means an academic. Just, absolutely not. Publish in an academic journal? No way. I'd rather get stuff out on the street quicker. But I think build is a really good word because you build strength, you build capacity, you build your superpowers. And those are things that resiliency, that's what resilience is for people. So for me, I like the word build.
Well, and I want to draw a little connection back to what you said, Kelly, because if resiliency is not a verb, right, then in order to achieve it, I have to build. And if I'm going to build, I have to put some energy into that. I have to put intention behind it. I have to choose to do it. And so I want to, I'm just pointing this out for my own brain. Why do it, right? Like, how do I know if it's going to work? Oh my gosh, what if I try and I fail? What a cool thing that it is built on engineering, which is making things work, and ecology, which is how the natural environment evolves. It's almost like a guarantee, like this will work. If you simply build on it, the bridges you drive on do stay stable. The natural environment does replenish itself on a constant basis. And so I think that there's a lot of, when you talk about why do something, you can see the faith in action when it comes to resiliency and why it's worth it to build.
And it should give you also, the other thing is that it should give you, if you think of build, then it should give you the courage to act in the face of uncertainty. Resilience helps us with uncertainty and ambiguity and being able to face the unknown, even when we're scared.
Yeah. Let me ask you guys this question. In fact, I'm going to pose this question. Dr. Kelly Culver, why is Jenn Quader someone that people should listen to on the subject of resiliency?
Oh, that's super easy. There's many ways to answer that question. So if we look at Jenn in her professional background, public relations, commercial real estate, find me an industry that hasn't been in constant turmoil for decades. Let's go back to 2007 and even probably before that. And you're in an industry where you have to communicate, you have to persuade, you have to influence, you have to have a convincing message, and you have to adapt and adjust all the time. Again, let's go to resilience. We behave in one of three ways. We survive, we adapt, or we transform. So that's the industry that Jenn is in. So from a professional perspective, number one. Number two, Jenn's alluded very briefly to she's an actor. She has experience in theater and on cruise ships, and so she can display her message in a convincing way and bring you into it. And thirdly, because you haven't heard, our listeners, our guests haven't heard Jenn's episode yet, Jenn has a personal experience that helps her help you learn how to walk in a direction that isn't straight. but you're going to get there in the end based on her own experience. So she has
true.
street creds in this.
Nice. And Jenn, why is Dr. Kelly Culver someone people should listen to on the subject of resiliency? And let's ignore that she is an actual doctor of resiliency.
Yeah, forget that part.
Forget that part.
I can put that aside. Listen, that's easy. Like, if I have street cred in the neighborhood, Kelly has street cred in the world. Kelly has seen resilience at a global level. Very few people, I'm going to say, sure, there are probably a lot of people who've seen it, but not many of them can organize their thoughts, talk about it, put it out coherently, and do those things. So I think that what Kelly brings is a true global perspective. And I've heard her talk about how she thinks about things as, kind of companies, regions, countries, and I think, and I should say individuals, companies, regions, countries, because it really spans all of that. So what I think she brings is a breadth that is really important, because when someone, you can look at resilience from any lens. And that when that lens is really small, it's the morning, you've woken up, it's time to go to work, and you're just not feeling it, and you don't want to go, and you don't want to do what you need to do. And, how do you see beyond that kind of 1 hour of deciding if you're going to do it or not? And the way is to zoom way out, like they say, we're each a little grain of sand, to understand we are all just sands, and it's part of a whole big beach, and this is bigger than me. And so I think Kelly brings kind of a physical embodiment of like, this is bigger than me. And she's seen that from a professional sense. And then I think personally, and again, I know our listeners are going to get to hear our TED Talks in future episodes, but what Kelly amazes me is she's gone through a personal tragedy that, look, everyone goes through tragedies in life. That's how it works, right? There's nobody who's like, I had a tragedy-free life. Like that doesn't exist. Did you live in a well? So, and if so, there's your tragedy, right?
Sounds tragic.
But Kelly went through a personal tragedy that so many of us will in one way or the other. And from it, she not only endured it, stepped up, but she created something like a model that, and you'll hear about this in her TEDx, a model that can be used by others. That's resilience. That is like, like the people before the wheel was invented. That's the person who sat and thought, okay, hold on, something could roll. You know what I mean? Like it's foresight. So I would say, I think that Dr. Kelly Culver brings a lot of foresight. And then finally, I would just say, like, I'm pretty sure her personal tragedy happened relatively recently. I don't have an exact timeline on that, but the woman has already given a TED Talk, published a book, like she's running a resiliency series. Like I think she's earned it just by way of like getting right back on that horse really fast also.
Well, you both are very impressive. I have grown to love both of you. Obviously, my wife, I've grown a lot earlier. But Kelly, you're right there. You're catching up.
You got two work wives, whether you like it or not.
Yay. Let me ask you this real quick. I'll start with Jenn. What is your elevator pitch to people about Resiliency the Podcast?
Resiliency the Podcast is the place to find stories, strategies, and inspiration. No, I won't go to my actress speech. My elevator pitch is this. The time is now. That's the elevator pitch. The time is now. If you've been thinking about being resilient, if you have been worried about how you will be resilient, if you are wondering, like, how could life get any weirder, then listen to our podcast, okay? Because the truth is life will get weirder. It's going to get weirder, folks. It's only going to get weirder in every realm, political, technological, societal. It's going to keep getting weird. So if you'd like a group of people who are working to navigate it through light and positivity, and who are working to bring that light and positivity in a positive force through all aspects, through the arts, through speaking, through business, through heart, then listen to Resiliency the Podcast.
Kelly, what's your
Don't
elevator
ask
pitch?
me that question.
Don't ask Kelly that question. Honestly,
Because Jenn has done such a great job.
I mean, she
There's
nailed it.
nothing left to say.
there really isn't. I mean, Jenn is always so eloquently spoken.
Resilience is in the ether. It's interesting. When I started to study resilience, which would have been, I started thinking about it seriously in 2016. I started to study it in earnest in 2020. All of a sudden, I saw the word everywhere. And I think sometimes once you're aware of something, you start to notice it more. But I will say that coming out of COVID, you have seen the word resilience. I mean, we've seen how to make your pets resilient. I think that's crazy. Seriously. Okay, and
hold
I'm
on.
an auntie
I'm-
to 2
I'm gonna-
labs.
I'm
I'm
gonna
an auntie to 2 labs.
Listen, I appreciate your antihood, but I would let my pets listen to a resilience podcast because my Griffin and Hank,
They hear it every
listen.
day.
They're
right behind you.
Kelly, I'm not. First of all, they're right behind me. I don't know if our viewers can see that.
I
But second
can
of
see
all,
them.
let me explain something. You may have to come and give a personal lesson to our oldest Griffin. He's 7 years old, guys, which is 50 in human years. And when you throw that ball and it inadvertently goes over the fence into the neighbor's yard, that boy will not be resilient. He will not he sits outside and waits for it. So he needs a little help, Dr. C.
Okay, so we can do some coaching because I am an auntie to Grizzly and Zook.
So typically at the end of each episode, we do rapid fire questions. Now, we're not going to do those today because each of you are going to have your own episodes and we're going to do those there. So I don't want you to step on those. But I will ask you one question, fun question. Hopefully it's not in your TED Talks, or pardon me, your TED Talks, in your episodes. I know you've thought about this. I'm going to ask it. I'll start with Dr. Kelly. If you could be any cookie, what would it be and why?
God. Oh, peanut butter. Something with peanut butter in it. I love peanut butter. And it has to have peanut butter chippets, and it has to have peanuts, and
You're nutty.
yeah. Why? Because it's different. Peanut butter is not a condiment of choice in France. I had the darndest time trying to find it.
Yeah.
It's
They're
not
Nutella
popular
people.
in the UK when I lived there. Mauritius, not so good. Not in Africa. It's a staple in the United States. It's a staple in Canada. So we've grown up with it. But it's kind of unique in the other places where I have lived and worked in the world.
Wow.
Dr. Kelly Culver, bringing peanut butter to the world.
Substance.
That's substance.
I think that's the key. She is a lady of substance, is what I hear.
And delicious. Come on.
Yeah, and yummy.
And yummy.
And yummy.
A staple in your household.
That's Resiliency the Podcast, a staple in your household.
Good elevator pitch.
What cookie are you and why?
Listen, very clear on this. I'm an Oreo cookie, okay? Very, very clear. Obviously, because first of all, I'm sweet and gooey on the inside, but I'm a little hard on the outside. I'm not hard, like but I'm a little strong. And then you meet me and I'm a goo ball on the inside. I would love to be packaged and shared all over the world, just like Resiliency the Podcast. So I feel like Oreo does that. And then if you stick me in milk, I'm even more of a goo ball. So I'm an Oreo all the way.
Well, I can attest to the hard exterior. I've seen that many times.
Hey, sometimes you gotta wait. What's Dr. Kelly Culver's word? Sometimes you gotta have a little grit if you're gonna be resilient.
Yes.
You've taught me resiliency so many times over. I don't know. I think maybe I'm an expert in resiliency now. I'm joking. I love my wife, of course.
Except for those days when he threatens to buy a plane ticket to Toronto to see me.
Right.
Kelly, I'm gonna let him do it.
I know.
Sometimes a work wife is a great thing to have, guys.
I know.
It's only a matter of time before she starts being resilient with me. Guys, thank you so much for listening today. Please, if you like the episode, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We want you to join our community. People are joining every day. We are here for you. We want to help you build resiliency. Jenn, where can people find you?
Well, first, you can find us online at resiliencythepodcast.com. That's where you can find all new episodes. You can find me at JennQuader.com or at Jenn Quader. That's JennQuader on all the social media channels.
And Dr. Kelly Culver, where can people find you?
You can find my company at culvergroup.ca, CA, Canada, CA. You can find me at drkellyculver.com, and you can find me, Dr. Kelly Culver, on LinkedIn and Instagram.
Great. That's CA, Canada, where they spell color with a U for some reason.
Among other things.
Oh, to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. We love you guys. We'll be back next time. Until then, please stay strong, enjoy life. Much love from Resiliency the Podcast. Thank you.